All right, you guys, happy Wednesday. I know that Tulsi Gabbard just got confirmed, and that is obviously huge political news. But also, you guys, Colleen Hoover just reactivated her Instagram account, and she has apparently deleted all of the photos with Blake Lively. And Ryan Reynolds' school teacher has just reached out to me. Plus, there has been movement in their court case. So unfortunately, I am so sorry. I regret to inform you that I cannot be a political reporter today. Okay, I have to suspend political news. If you came here for politics, again, I apologize. I've already failed you. But to the rest of us, welcome back to Candace. It's like yesterday, I'm unpacking an entire ring in France. I'm like going to war with the French president, trying to expose all the connections. Today, I am back in Hollywood, similarly doing the same thing. For those of you who understand, corruption is corruption, evil is evil, and you have to focus on it. And we also need to stop being so ADHD where we're only into stories at the very beginning of them and we never see them through. Like, we need to bring back true investigative reporting where people do not stop until the evil is rooted out. And this story, obviously, it bears all of the signs, the telltale signs of true evil in which we all must root out. Okay. So there's a lot going on right now in Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively world. I obviously have the inside scoop because I've been obsessively following this. So let's start with Colleen Hoover. Okay. That is the author of It Ends With Us, who text messages, emails, interviews, all of the proof that is out there in the public shows us that she positively adored Justin Baldoni. She asked him herself. Initially, he was just getting involved with this project because of the book, but then she asked him herself to play Ryle in the movie. And things were great until Blake Lively, right? We actually had, and I think we're still trying to pull it in, this old clip of her discussing how amazing Justin Baldoni was, because he didn't just want to take on this book project, but it was important for him to understand the readers and the fans of the book, what it was that they adored about these characters, because he didn't want to disappoint them when he brought this to life. Chris, were we able to pull that in? We can show it later if not. Okay, perfect. We'll have it soon. And so when you watch this clip and you see how much work he put into it, and there are those clips available of him sitting down at these tables and speaking to all of these fans, you go, what went wrong? That suddenly Colleen Hoover didn't appear to be on his side, that she was content to walk the red carpet assuming that she obviously knew he wasn't there, that he was being put in the basement. And she definitely knew that he was not a part of all of these promos. Well, I'm not cutting anybody any excuses, but I now believe firmly, having worked through the preferred Reynolds style of abuse, that Colleen Hoover was similarly love-bombed by the couple. I think that's what they do. I think Brandon Sklenar, Colleen, Channing Tatum, Isabel Ferrer, everyone was love-bombed. They isolate the person they want to destroy. In this case, it was Justin Baldoni. And then they are the exact opposite, overwhelmingly amazing and kind and offering all kinds of A-list goodies to the people that are around the person that they're trying to target. Oh, Liz Plank, oh, why don't you be a part of this random documentary? Oh, what is it that you want? We are just such good people, even all the way at the top. We're good people. We want to help you. And of course, there is some dark irony here that Colleen Hoover wrote this book about abuse, but seemed unable to pick up the abuse that was happening right under her nose. So she unwittingly, I should say unwittingly, played along in this. She allowed Justin and his family to be put in that basement and seemed open to the prospect, as we showed in that old interview with her and Blake, of her getting her movie rights back, even though Wayfarer and Justin had already purchased the sequel rights, which I would love to be a part of the project. Blake said, if Colleen gets her book rights back. And again, I'm not providing any excuses for Colleen Hoover here, but I do think that strategy of love bombing would work, because what they're thinking is, all we have to do, if you're Blake and Ryan, is imagine what these people want. What would be the biggest help to them? What are their biggest dreams? How do we help them realize those dreams? So for Brandon Sklenar, we know, it's not confirmed that they helped, but we know that during this time period, he signed with WME, the biggest agency in the world. And he's not that big of an actor, but that happened for him suddenly. We know with Colleen Hoover, it was likely this pitch of, you should own your book rights. You should own the sequel rights. We want to help you do that. Maybe they were going to take a piece of the production company. Who knows? We know with Channing Tatum, it was Gambit, this role that he had dreamed up since he was a child. And they just went along with it. I think all of these people went along with it, not perceiving that there was evil afoot. Okay. So, just to basically recap here, when Blake filed her CRD complaint on December 20th, Colleen Hoover made her support of Blake Lively clear to the public. She stopped short of throwing Justin Baldoni under the bus, but her statement was definitively loud and clear, especially given the fact that she attended all of the promos and the screenings with Blake and Brandon leading up to the film's release. And it felt very much, if you were watching everything, like they established the cool kids table, so to speak. Justin was nowhere. They wanted him to feel alone, and he was not allowed to sit with the cool kids. Okay. So Colleen posted this in response to that filing. She wrote, Blake Lively, you have been nothing but honest, kind, supportive, and patient since the day we met. Thank you for being exactly the human that you are. Never change, never wilt. Okay, so she didn't exactly throw him under the bus, but how is the public supposed to read that? We're reading that you support her, so to some degree you must believe her. Not that there's not a reason that you wouldn't believe her, but did you hear out Justin? By the way, we just got that clip of her speaking about Justin before all of this. So here is Colleen Hoover before she got Blakefied. Take a listen.
I feel like readers know what they know what they want to see when it comes to a book that they're so passionate about. And I think a lot of times that can be overlooked. But Justin, from the very beginning, was so adamant on including them because they're the ones, who made the book see the success it saw. And so it's very important that you capture the things that they loved in the movie. And they involved, had a contest and involved several readers in getting to be there for the script reading. And they were very open and receptive to their feedback. I know that their feedback actually changed some of the things in the script for the better. And I just thought that was brilliant. I watched Justin on Jane the Virgin in his role of Raphael, and you love that character. He's so, he's so wonderful. And Justin in general, like, I'm just a fan of his, on his Instagram and his TikTok pages. And it was kind of scary. I was like, no, I don't want to see you get angry. I don't want to see you be mean. But, the whole time that I've been thinking about this movie and who could play the characters, like, honestly, you need someone in the role of Ryle who it's going to hurt when you see them not be who you wish they could be.
She adored Justin. She did. I'm sorry. She absolutely adored Justin. We could show you clip after clip after clip. Obviously, you can read the lawsuit and see the emails. And then, like I said, she got Blakeified, Reynolds-ified, and suddenly she's in love with Blake in so much that she's allowing Justin to be treated terribly. That's the way the public is reading this, and they're right to read it that way. Suddenly, Justin files his countersuit, and there's major backlash against her for having supported Blake, but not having said anything about Justin. And really, this happened because of mommy sleuths, right? Like, we pieced together what started to look like sending your young son to school, in elementary school, only to discover that there's a bunch of cool kids in the cafeteria that are mocking him and like throwing food at him. You know what I mean? It's like throwing food at him, calling him a loser. And then you find out he's been eating alone in the classroom with the teacher ever since. It's just heartbreaking. And you're going, why? Why is this happening to him? And so the tables turned very quickly against Colleen. People expected her to then now give a more informed answer, a more informed response as to how she could have gone along with what is appearing to be such obvious forms of bullying. And so Colleen deactivated her Instagram on January 21st. And she has now just reemerged, and she's cleaned out her Instagram page. She has, without question, deleted 5 Instagram posts. And the internet is certain that these were all of the Instagram posts of her and Blake Lively. Essentially, not that she's posting of Justin Baldoni, not that she has moved to refollow Justin Baldoni, but it seems like she's taking at least a more neutral stance on Instagram. So how do we know for a fact that she deleted 5 posts? Well, in case you guys don't know, there is this amazing website called Social Blade, socialblade.com. It provides you with accurate statistics regarding followers and posts on any social media profile. All you have to do is put the handle in, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, and it will shoot you back so you can actually see how people are performing. Are they gaining followers? Are they losing followers? Are they following people? Are they not following people? It allows you to observe those trends. I guess it's kind of stalkerish, but it makes sense for businesses of why you want to look into these stats sometimes to see how you're performing. And so here is Colleen's social blade, which shows you on that right-hand side media for the last 30 days. She's removed 5 of those posts that she had up. And so that's incredibly interesting. But we should also, by the way, take a look at Social Blade while we're there and note the consequence has been terrible for Blake and Ryan in terms of people following them. Look at these metrics of their followers. This is Blake Lively, okay? That tells us there at the bottom that over the last 30 days, she has lost 397,000 subscribers, okay? That is not a small amount. If you similarly go over to Ryan Reynolds, he's lost almost the same amount, 1,000 more than her, 398,000 subscribers. This is the internet answering and telling you what they think about the situation, especially when you weigh it against Justin Baldoni. Look at his statistics. Over the last 30 days, he has received 206, or you could almost say 207,000 additional followers. So in the court of public opinion, they've lost, okay? So you can ask the question, why did Colleen delete these posts? Well, some people are speculating, well, she's read through things and now she's on Justin Baldoni's side. I don't feel that way because she hasn't made a strong enough statement. She has not made a statement in his favor. She should make a statement in his favor because the proof is overwhelming, and she has, you could say, established her brand as someone who is anti-abuse. I think it's really important to now stake a horse in this race and say, I obviously was completely manipulated and maybe rightfully manipulated, and we could agree and say, okay, well, if Blake came to her after love bombing her and said, I've been abused, maybe Colleen actually did just legitimately believe her and did something that wasn't being motivated by anything other than belief, right? But she's not doing more than that. And so like I said, this feels a little bit like a cop-out. And I think it's more likely that what she's doing here is trying to stay out of it. This is the Taylor Swift movement. This is likely a legal strategy. I don't want to be involved in this case. Impossible. She's already been named, not as a defendant or as a plaintiff, but rather just named in the evidence of Justin Baldoni showing the picture of how things were, how the movie came about. And so without question, she's going to be called to take the stand and to speak about Justin's behavior. But I think she doesn't want to be pulled in beyond that. I really do believe that if you are her PR team, if you're her agents, if you are her lawyer, you are saying to her, you need to be neutral. You need to stay out of this thing. This is not good for you. It's not good for your future, which is going to get ugly very fast. And it has the ability to ricochet and to harm you as well. And I wanted to note this, by the way, in terms of speaking about that legal strategy. We have to go back to February 3rd. Remember, that was when they had the first hearing before Judge Lehman in New York, the first time the lawyers for all of the parties to the case were meeting. And there were some very important things that were brought up. So I'm going to show you this portion of the transcript from that court hearing because it's very relevant to what might be taking place here. I got a TikTok tip. Wow, that was amazing to say. I want to say it again. I got a TikTok tip. And had a conversation with somebody who runs the Be Better company. You guys might know him, Marcos. We're going to get to him in an email that he sent me. But so in the lead up to this moment of the transcript that I'm going to show you, that February 3rd showdown, this was obviously when Blake Lively's lawyers wanted to have Brian Friedman gagged. That didn't happen. They kind of told him he needed to chill. He hasn't really chilled, by the way. He's still doing interviews with TMZ, but essentially he can't do anything that might harm the jury pool is what they said to him. But there was an interesting back and forth between Blake Lively's lawyers. So leading up to this moment, just so you're not completely lost, they were discussing whether or not to consolidate or deconsolidate the cases with the New York Times, and also discussing the recent amendment that the Wayfarer legal team had filed, which essentially they filed that amendment, included the New York Times little tidbits and like the data from the New York Times, and also were accusing Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds of promissory fraud. So it wasn't like a major amendment, but it was a significant amendment that they would need time to respond to. So this is what happened in the courtroom. Wilkie Farr said, and by the way, this is Wilkie Farr are Blake Lively's lawyers. If you want to read along here, they said, "Our plan at docket 49 is no longer feasible. Counsel for Wayfarer did not tell us that they planned to file an amended complaint, including a 168 compendium, which is essentially all those text messages. There is authority to deconsolidate the cases. The Times may have its own views. We'd like to confer. Given that the Wayfarer parties added a new defendant, we have contemplated amending our own complaint. We have 2 weeks to do it. We think we can still make the trial date of March 9th, 2026. Okay, so essentially they're just saying they're like, they amended, and like we may be amending as well to add some new parties. So Judge Lehman asks that for clarification. Judge Lehman says, you are suggesting you'll add new parties by next Friday, February 14th. How quickly would you serve them? Okay, so he's like, this is due on February 14th. You're saying you can make this happen on February 14th. And Wilkie Farr responds and says, we'll ask them, meaning the parties that they're planning to add to this case, to accept service. If they say no, we'll immediately start trying to serve them. It's a very interesting sentence because they're basically saying, we're going to just ask some plaintiff to join this willingly, so we're not going to have to worry about delivery of service. We'll just say we're sending the person now, you're going to receive this, and now you're a plaintiff to this case formally. But if they say no, which suggests that like they don't really know whether this is going to be a receptive, a plaintiff to this case, then we'll start trying to serve them. Essentially, we're just going to like force them into this. Okay. Then he goes on, and Wilkie Farr's attorneys say there's one set of lawyers on the other side. There will be numerous depositions, including on the false light claims. Discovery will involve issues typical in sexual harassment cases and communications by defendants and their agents and the media, including people who may have been paid. I don't know why they say that. No one's been paid. Truly, we all just don't like what Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have done. They conclude by saying this case involves a number of high-profile individuals, including third parties. We intend to seek a protective order. There has been a significant amount of leaking to the media. We want to list all the parties from the beginning. So this was actually a very major thing to say, that there's some party to the suit that has not been named yet. And we should have focused more on that language, because what on earth are they talking about? Who's missing? Who's joining in as a potential willing plaintiff to this case? And we have an answer. As I said, we had a TikToker who had some tea. We had some TikTok tea on this. He sent me an email yesterday, and he's been going viral himself covering this suit. So I did my thing. You know, I went through his TikTok, figured out everything about him and his great grandparents to check him out. And there's an amazing fact here in that this TikToker, Marcos, who runs the Be Better company, actually was Team Blake Lively when this all began, right? So this is not somebody that, like me, was like instantly anti-Me Too. He was firmly on the other side. He very much is like, I believe that we should listen to him when they file these complaints. He went through everything, thought that like what Blake Lively had been through was horrific, and then did this crazy thing called reading Justin Baldoni's countersuit and was like, listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but everything that I'm reading here points to the fact that Blake Lively manipulated her audiences and lied to her audiences. And like, I'm kind of shocked as someone who fully believed her. And he's just basically as psychotic as me. Like, he's like a TikTok with the receipts, read every single line of it like I did. And he put in part this like 9-part series, which is amazing work done, doing a deep dive on what exactly was in Justin Baldoni's case that made him turn and realize that Blake Lively was not telling the truth, and that it was going to be a very steep climb for them to explain why they misrepresented so many things in their initial filing. So he was Team Blake Lively. That's very important to understand. He was not biased against her in any way. And so what happened, and I can't tell you who the person was, but he got a very strong tip from somebody regarding Jenny Slate potentially being brought into the suit. And what ended up happening was, after he discussed this tip, and like I said, we have ways of knowing if this is legit, if it's coming from, you know, somebody close to the person around. He confirmed like this is a legit tip to talk about. He said allegedly when he did put up this video on TikTok, and the video ends up getting taken down. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but here is the tip that the Be Better company's Marcos got regarding Jenny Slate. Take a listen.
And now for the moment you've all been waiting for. So my source has told me that Lively's legal team is allegedly attempting to amend their filing and add Jenny Slate as a plaintiff to the lawsuit. But Jenny Slate allegedly does not want to be involved in this mess at all. And if she rejects their offer to be made an actual plaintiff in the case, which seems likely, they're likely going to subpoena her anyway and just include her testimony or her as evidence because she allegedly has had some very bad experiences with Justin Baldoni in regard to harassment or being made to feel uncomfortable on set. I think at this point, Lively's team very strongly believes that if they're able to add more women officially to the lawsuit, that the claims will look more legitimate. But at this point, I don't think Jenny Slate or anyone else on the cast really wants to jump aboard the Plantation Khaleesi's yacht that seems to be sinking rather quickly.
Plantation Khaleesi is quite the nickname for Blake Lively. So he posts this video and then it gets taken down from TikTok on February 6th, right? And he told me that when he looked into why it got taken down, essentially they received some sort of a legal threat in the background that like they could go after them for something defamatory in the video. So social media companies are not here to investigate. They're not here to be judges and lawyers, but having a lawyer email you on behalf of a client, and if it's an A-list client saying like, we're going to come after you, TikTok, for allowing this defamation to exist on the platform, they're not going to take a risk. They're not going to be like, I'm going to go with Marcos, right? I'm going to be like, listen, this person seems like they have a lot of money. They got a lot of power. I'm just going to take this TikTok video down. And that's what happened. And he was infuriated about this. And he essentially started tagging Brian Friedman's team and saying like, hey, if you want like something that you should be looking into and potentially this could happen, you should be subpoenaing TikTok, because if her entire argument is that Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer team manipulated the press, and she's doing the exact same thing right now, meaning she's upset about TikTokers coming out with information or believing that TikTokers are leaking information, well, then that kind of defeats her own argument. And so Marcos somehow was able to get this video reinstated by basically saying a TikTok, this is ridiculous. This is free speech. He said allegedly. He didn't say like this is confirmed. He said exactly how he heard it as a source. This is what like journalism is called. This is what you do when you report. You get information, you give it to the public, and you give them exactly how you receive that information, which is like, this is allegedly, but it's a strong source. So we should probably, by the way, that's a major, major, major clue here. And everything that I'm seeing indicates that he's right. So that language in that first hearing, we might add a plaintiff. We're going to ask them to accept service, but if not, then we'll just subpoena. It's like, okay, so is the plaintiff willing to do this? Or do you feel like you can get this person to join this suit, or is this person fighting you? We don't know. So that's on February 6th. We should talk about Jenny Slate in general, or why I just haven't even been speaking about Jenny Slate. Like genuinely, I didn't mention her. She played some role in the movie, and she instantly, when Blake Lively filed her complaint, did not mince words. She didn't try to make it seem like she wasn't picking a side. She strongly picked Blake Lively's side. This was a statement she released. She said, as Blake Lively's castmate and friend, I voice my support as she takes action against those reported to have planned and carried out an attack on her reputation. Blake is a leader, loyal friend, and a trusted source of emotional support for me and so many who know and love her. What has been revealed about the attack on Blake is terribly dark, disturbing, and wholly threatening, she added. I commend my friend. I admire her bravery, and I stand by her side. Okay, so the reason why I kind of ignored Jenny Slate and all this is because like I just get vibes from people, and I just felt like that statement was just very theater kid. It was way too much, and it's just like, all right, I don't really need to care about this. There's something about her that just registered to me, and I don't say this in like a derogatory way, but just like doing too much. And I could imagine very simply that she got wrapped into this like Blake Lively spell of just like, I'm gonna be the most amazing person. The fact that she like called her like an emotional support puppy, like one of these people on like on a plane who's like, I can't fly without my puppy, you know? I just was like, it's too much. It's too much too fast. And I just didn't think it was relevant to looking into everything. But I will say, it is likely that similarly, she was under this spell of the Reynolds family, and she wanted to feel like the A-list love, like she just wanted to hang out with them 1 degree closer to Taylor Swift. Who knows, maybe Taylor Swift even sprinkled a little glitter on her at a concert. We don't know what the connection is there, but she probably believed Blake Lively, and Blake Lively has proven, Ryan Reynolds has proven to be actually the smartest in the room and was likely manipulating her. And it is likely, this is my guess, that Blake and Ryan have messages with her, because if she's that dramatic in a release statement, she probably was even more dramatic in like just being the friend that supports your friend even when you know you're lying. Like, women lie to each other. Like, we have to be honest about this. This kind of gets into when I was going over like the fat acceptance movement, and you would see like pictures of people like Lena Dunham wearing a bathing suit and like a bunch of women in the comments being like, you look amazing. And it's like, okay, why are we doing that? Because we want to make each other feel good. That's like what women do. We just want to be the emotional support to your friend. Like, you know, maybe her outfit doesn't look great. And she's like, how do I look? You're like, you look so hot. You know, you look amazing. It's just this weird thing that women do. I don't know why, but we lie to each other on the internet. I see it all the time. I want to call it out. I want to be like the internet police and be like, you know, that's not true. Stop supporting your friends when they're doing bad or harmful things. I think Jenny Slate, again, full opinion, full speculation, was that girl in the room who just wanted to like support whatever Blake was saying. And she probably texted her and was like, me too. You know, I felt weird and creepy too, or whatever. So Blake and Ryan are all out of cards, and they've got nothing to prove this right now. And they're like, could we get Jenny Slate, the friend that nodded her head and said yes to everything to us, to join this lawsuit, to give it just a little bit more of a punch? Like, no, it was two of us that felt that we were harassed on set sexually. Like, you know, Justin Baldoni was just so into Jenny Slate too, so into me. Also, he wasn't into me because I'm also accusing him of treating me fat, but don't worry about how those two things cancel each other out in this lawsuit. But like, we have text messages with Jenny Slate, and I do think she was just being the raw friend. She just gives me that vibe. So it's interesting. It's very interesting to consider her as a potential piece of this. Again, he's saying allegedly. I know nothing of this. I was not contacted by anybody potentially in Jenny Slate's orbit, but we can begin to look at what just happened, okay? So on February 10th, 2 days ago, Blake Lively's team, having just told them on February 3rd, like, we're going to add new people we're going to amend our complaint, and we're going to add some new plaintiffs and maybe try to serve them, then filed 2 days ago for an extension. They're like, actually, we're not going to be able to make that amendment due date of February 14th. So I'm showing you what they filed, and I'm just going to take you to the relevant points. Their lawyer wrote to Dear Judge Lehman, February 14th, 2025 is the original default deadline for Ms. Lively to file her amended complaint. As a matter of course, in relation to responsive pleadings of Wayfarer Studios, LLC. Then they go on to say, Ms. Lively respectfully submits that an extension for filing an amended complaint as a matter of course to March 5th, 2025 is warranted. So essentially, this is due February 14th. We're asking you to extend until March 5th. And then the reason she lists here for why she needs that extension is bizarre. She says, the modest extension will allow for Ms. Lively to address the extensive new facts and claims at issue in this litigation. Such an extension is also warranted given that after counsel for Ms. Lively informed the court on February 3rd that she intended to amend her complaint to additional parties and claims, one of those intended parties, Jed Wallace, along with his company Street Relations, filed an anticipatory and meritless 10-page complaint in the federal district court in Texas regarding issues that substantially overlap with the issues in this litigation. The additional time requested will allow Ms. Lively to address properly the procedural issues arising from this unmeritorious lawsuit as well. So she's saying, remember we talked about Jed, who she came after in her CRD filing. Well, Jed, and then she had to file that in Texas. Well, Jed responded similarly to Brian Friedman responding on behalf of Wayfarer, but this is a totally separate suit that's happening in Texas. And she's trying to justify an extension because he filed his response, which he would have had to do to her lawsuit. That makes entirely no sense. Anyways, because Brian Friedman is Brian Friedman, he hits them back pretty hard in his response. He writes back on behalf of Wayfarer and says, notwithstanding the Lively party's inexplicable refusal to consent to a similar extension requested by the Wayfarer parties in the throes of the Los Angeles wildfires, shade, the Wayfarer parties have no objection to the extension sought by the Lively parties. So they're like, whatever, take your extension. We don't even care. But if you do take your extension, then we're asking for an extension beyond that, essentially to allow us to respond thereto on April 16th. But then he hits her hard on this weird attempt to lie to the judge about Jed Wallace. And he says, unfortunately, the Lively party's letter goes further than a simple request for an extension of time, leveling unnecessary and baseless attacks on non-party Jed Wallace and the litigation pending against Ms. Lively in the USDC for the Western District of Texas. What Lively parties conspicuously failed to mention is that the now pending litigation in Texas was precipitated by Miss Lively, who initiated legal action against Mr. Wallace in Texas state court on January 21st, approximately 2 weeks before he filed his federal lawsuit in response. While the Lively parties now claim that Mr. Wallace's Texas actions suffer from serious issues with respect to jurisdiction, in Miss Lively's verified petition seeking a pre-suit deposition of Mr. Wallace, Miss Lively acknowledges that the jurisdiction in Texas is proper given Mr. Wallace's domicile. So he's like, I have no idea why she's lying to the court. And then he attaches her initial petition in Texas, which is just so embarrassing, right? It's the same tactic that they're doing over and over again of trying to manipulate the courts to get what they want, thinking that people are not going to keep receipts. Like, hi, have you met Brian Friedman yet? I know I haven't, but I wouldn't try this game. I wouldn't try trying to manipulate Judge Lehman and trying to tell him, I need this extension because this guy Jed did this crazy thing and filed somewhere where he doesn't have jurisdiction, as if Brian Friedman's not going to pull up and be like, actually, you established his jurisdiction. You filed first in Texas, and he's replying. And by the way, he's not a party to our case here in New York. That's what Brian Friedman did. He's just a savage. Brian Friedman is actually my spirit animal. Anyways, Judge Lehman responds to this order and he slaps down. He just slaps her down. I don't know what else to say. Probably because he probably doesn't take kind to just being manipulated. You know, you should have just been like, I want an extension because I don't have any proof. I need to potentially, allegedly, kind of try to get someone to join this suit. Please, Colleen Hoover, didn't you see something? Did you see him look at my butt? I don't know. Could somebody please just join in? Maybe young Lily Bloom, Elizabeth Farrer, did you see something that you didn't like? Like she's trying. They're essentially trying to lobby someone to give this thing some teeth. And so this is the judge's order. He comes back and he says, order granting in part and denying in part the letter motion for the extension of time to file. He added 1 day. So it's supposed to be February 14th. That's a Friday that their amended filing was due. He bumped it to February 17th, which is a Monday, which is also a holiday. So I think it's still February 14th. I don't know, but which would be over the weekend, that would be the first Monday. And so, yeah, he gives an answer. The Lively parties have not offered good cause for any further extension. And so maybe you just shouldn't have lied about why you needed the extension, because that's not a good cause to talk about what's happening in Texas. It has nothing to do with this case. So completely shut down. All right, guys, I got to get to talking to you about Ryan Reynolds' teacher emailing me. Okay, that it's interesting. It's very interesting. Now I want to get into psychology. Because I love psychology. I think that's also what has been so compelling about this case for so many women, is that it feels like we are watching IDTV. There's something about it. Why are women drawn to criminal shows where we get to learn things? It's because we're constantly thinking about our safety. And there's something about this story that kind of violates our safety in a way of feeling like people were nice and then realizing that they were totally behaving like psychopaths and were doing something taking it so far as Ryan Reynolds did. So anyways, we are learning some new things about Blake and Ryan because the internet just keeps on digging and just keeps on finding stuff. And there was an interview that many of you tagged me in that resurfaced a couple of days ago. And it's Blake Lively speaking at the Forbes Women's Summit. And this is from 2022. And she's just sort of casually discussing how, she lies and she takes over movies. Take a listen.
I would show up on a set. I knew that they just wanted me to show up and look cute and stand on a little pink sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say. But I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that once they saw that I was able to offer that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull, because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do. And so it was like, it was a really strange position to be in, because I felt like, I don't want to just like be an actor. Like I want to, you know, I want to have more authorship.
Yeah, I bet it did feel like a bit of a rug pull. I would say this. Blake Lively, I almost appreciate her because she doesn't know she's insane. Like, she doesn't know how insane that sounds. And whoever was sitting across from her had to nod and go along with this. And you're going, wait, you're basically saying you're a liar. You misrepresent who you are. Maybe that has something to do with why you're now being sued for promissory fraud, because you're admitting that you go in there and you're like, yeah, I'd like to be an actor. And then you take over everything. I mean, just imagine taking this out of the context of celebrities, and you like call a plumber to come fix your toilet. And he's in there and he's like, hey, I'm actually going to reorganize your closet. And you're like, no, actually, I'm good. Could you just fix the toilet? And he's like, no, I'm here to be your dad. I want to be your dad now. And you're like, no, I don't want you to be my dad. I want you to fix the toilet. That's what I hired you for. It's a job that I hired you for. And he's like, where's your baby? I want to hold the baby and burp the baby. And you're like, I don't need you to burp my baby. You're not my husband. Well, I can be more. I can be more than your plumber. I can be your husband. And you're going, what's going on? Why do I feel like I need to call the police? Why do I feel like I need to call Brian Friedman? This is insane. What are you talking about? She genuinely is not aware of how insane she sounds. And if you're wondering, like, hey, Blake, if you want to be that person, if you want to be a director, or if you want to be the writer, why don't you just go be that? You're allowed to be a director. You're allowed to be a writer. Just write. Well, actually, there's an answer to that. She had a written interview with Vogue that was released in August of 2024. And here's what she said. Okay. By the way, it's amazing that she still is able to be a bit bratty in this email when somebody asks her a totally basic question about her baking, because she always speaks about her baking and it's all over her Instagram. But here's what she said to the interviewer. The interviewer writes, I ask if she writes. Blake tilts her head, suddenly curious. She plays with the big blue ring on her finger. My husband did an interview where they asked, what's something surprising that people don't know about your wife? And he said, it's that she's a writer. She writes on every movie she works on. And the interviewer said, and the baking? And the baking, right? She's a great baker. It was just such an interesting moment. I don't know if it's a female thing or not, but they always want to talk about the baking. And then the writer said, I'm sorry I asked to bake together. I say a little abashed. I'm a terrible baker. And then she says, why did you ask about the writing? I say the question occurred to me the night before. I had read about all of her creative endeavors, and something about that restlessness felt familiar. Later, Feig will confirm that she worked to bring about her vision for a character. She did work on her dialogue to make that happen, he will say admiringly, and it just brought everything to life. I ask Lively if she would ever write something from scratch. She considers this. She says, quote, a blank page is not nearly as exciting to me as starting with a script and finding something people have overlooked, saying, no, there's something here. To me, it's a treasure hunt. And so when I can see the treasure, then I get to be an archaeologist. I get to excavate. I get to carve it out and find this thing and show people the value in it. That, to me, is what I want to, can't say that last word, what I love. Okay. So she's essentially saying, I like to just take over people's work, and that's insane. And that's crazy. And this is a reason why I think in the future, people are just not going to work with her, because it's starting to add up. People are realizing that this is a pathology. And regarding Ryan Reynolds, I have received, just to be clear, a ton of emails and tips about him, people that worked as his stunt double, people that worked as Blake Lively's stunt double. And I'm trying to bring to the public what I think is relevant in terms of this case. And I don't share everything, because sometimes I think it's just unfair. Like if somebody says, oh, I dated him 20 years ago, he was majorly into drugs. I've gotten these sorts of emails. I'm like, okay, well, 20 years ago, how old was he? 28. Is that really relevant? Whatever. Or the saying that he smokes pot, by the way, to be clear there. These sorts of things don't seem relevant to me, but this one I thought was relevant, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because it is somebody that is sharing an experience from his childhood. It is also somebody who has to be at least 70 years old in order to have been the drama teacher, assuming a teacher is going to be about 20 years old if they're literally just starting their career, and had Ryan Reynolds in his class and felt the need to reach out. And I think Ryan Reynolds' childhood is actually relevant because Ryan Reynolds himself oddly interjected his childhood traumas into this entire thing. Remember in Deadpool, he's speaking about, oh, like, I got to address my childhood traumas, like making fun of Justin Baldoni. But then there was that really weird promo with his mom for It Ends With Us. And they started speaking about his relationship with his dad and how he had unresolved issues with his dad. So let's take a listen to what he says.
I don't feel very comfortable asking this question.
Nope, I got it. I'll get it. Here, I can do that. Here, you're not going to read it. I will then. Okay, thank you very much. That's the one. It says Ryan would love to have a new dad to have a catch. And I think he could really use a man in his life. Hugh is no spring chicken anymore. Blink once for yes, or blink once for I'd love to be your new dad. He blinked. He blinked.
Is this hell?
No, it's Iowa. That's from Field of Dreams. It's one of Ryan's favorite movies because he and his late father had so much unresolved sadness. But pride got in the way, and neither of them were able to find closure. Ryan thinks Field of Dreams is a true story because he's on meth, and that drug is super scary.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Call me Blake.
Oh,
I could blow your mind, dog.
Okay, so it was very weird. And like I told you in past interviews, Ryan has spoken about this like relationship with his father, and that's the reason why he's so insane and controlling. He's spoken about how it made him a bit of a control freak because his dad used to yell or whatever. Seems very clear if that's a circumstance, Ryan is kind of becoming, maybe taking on some elements of his father. But this message arrived in my box, and it's about his first drama teacher from when he was 13 years old. And I think it's interesting to share. And again, this is going to be a much older person. I think that's relevant because there are two people who always tell the truth, and that's senior citizens and toddlers. They just get to a place where they just constantly are telling you the truth about everything, and they don't care what anybody has to think about it or say about it. And so this individual wrote this. I'm cutting off the person's name, obviously, because I'm afraid Ryan Reynolds will go after him. It came in from Alberta, Canada. He said, "It may be an odd thing. I was his first acting teacher. True. Summer 1989, he was 12. His parents had gone on a vacation, so grandparents he was left with had him for 3 weeks, as I recall. After a week, they enrolled him in my classes, essentially, as I found out, because they needed a break from him. Within the first 3 days, I had had enough. The other kids had had enough, and their parents were complaining because everything was about him. Self-centered, loud, sneaky, obnoxious, narcissistic, unkind, and deceitful. I spoke to the grandparents that he needed to abide by the expectations, or I'd punt him and give them a refund. The next day, same old, so I kicked him out. 2 days back with the grandparents, they begged me to take him back, so I set on a couple of conditions. I drew up a quote-unquote contract, essentially reiterating the initial expectations, but adding some behavioral things I had noticed that needed to be addressed. And he had to write an apology letter to the class and either read it to the class or memorize it and present it to the class like a script. And if the other students said no, then no it would be. But I did hold the final say. I work with kids in mental health. I have for decades. This was nothing new to me. So he returned. The kids were a bit shocked, but he was on probation. And then he was asked, Ryan, is there something that you'd like to say to other students here? Yes, if I may. He got up, audience of 15 plus kids, paper in hand. He glanced down at it, started to read it, then stuttered, cleared his throat, swallowed, then started without the paper. Tears started to well in his eyes. I'm so sorry that I, heavy breathing, selfishly stole time from you all as Mr. David was trying to teach us all about acting, and I made it about me. And I just want to say that I will do my best to listen and will try really hard not to interrupt. Tears now. And it's just that nobody really listens to me. So sniff, I will try my best to be better. Sorry, full tears. The kids were on their feet, over to give him a hug, etc. Can he come back to our class, please? So I said yes. A few minutes later, he passes by me and under his breath utters, I was acting. Like, it's very scary. I don't know. So I stopped him from walking away and I whispered, I know. I guess he had learned something, but there was a streak in him. I wouldn't trust him. I didn't know if it was evil, insecurity, a ton, fear, psychopathy, arrogance, or just a sociopath, but he was 12. He never says he took an acting course. He turned 13 in October. He had the it factor. I think I still have his first headshot in a box somewhere with 100 other kids that I taught. I just felt like I should share that. I don't know. That one, for some reason, to me, first off hit to the fact that like there is some issues in his background or whatever, which he has admitted in these weird skits. But the other thing was just like the ability to switch on and to have a teacher who has a background in mental health, which I was able to confirm, believing that there was some sort of a pathology that was driving that and that he's had that for a very long time. Interesting enough to share, weird. And I just feel like that's creepy to be like crying in front of class and turn to teacher and be like, I was acting. Everything that you just saw was not real. It's just giving serial killer dressed as an actor. You know, I'm not saying Ryan's a serial killer. I'm just saying like if he wasn't an actor, where would Ryan be? That's all I'm saying. So anyways, that is enough about that. Also, we have A Simple Favor, which is coming up soon, coming out. That is the sequel, A Simple Favor 2, featuring Anna Kendrick. There's a ton writing on that. You know, the comments, people are enraged that this project is going forward. Poor Anna Kendrick has nothing to do with anything, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that movie when it is released. Anyways, you guys, that is it. We will see you guys tomorrow.